Hours to take tonight?
Not bad, Mr. Hennessy. Almost 20 grand.
Good. Tell the boys I'll be with them in a few minutes. Deposit tomorrow. 142 $100 bills, $150 bills, the rest 5, 10.
I told you I'd come back. Remember Buchanan?
You're not Buchanan.
I don't look like him, but I am him. Don't you recognize the voice, Jim? I promise to see you die, and I will.
Hey, boss, what's the matter? Hey, boss, let us in. Hey, boss. Hey, boss.
You are listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. The following podcast contains adult language, adult situations, and spoilers for the movies discussed occur often. You've been warned. Now, take it away, Dr. Rausch.
They must be destroyed on sight.
And welcome back. It is They Must Be Destroyed on Sight, episode 242. I'm your host, Lee. If it weren't for my money, you'd be experimenting with cats and dogs in that flea-sized lab of yours in Europe, Russell. And I'm joined by my trusty co-host, Lee. I said I would live to see you die. Hardy, how you doing, man?
I'm like a turtle.
You're like a turtle. Yeah, exactly. That's what struck me with that meme I shared. Yeah.
I'm just a turtle. I just live to see you die. That's my purpose in life.
This means nothing to anyone listening to this. It's like you have to be on our Facebook walls to see this shit. But yeah, we're doing kind of a little bit of an old 1950s classic, radioactive monster kind of feature. Creature with the Atom Brain from 1955, although it should be called like The Creatures with the Atom Brains or something like that, since there's several of them. But that's beside the point. Yeah. But we'll get into that in a few minutes. But first off, we have some comments and YouTube comments. So we got to get into these, and they're all positive.
I thought they were all going to be like, where's the movie?
Well, we'll get to it, but technically they're all positive. So on our episode for The Beast of War, someone called David Windstrom said, glad you guys watched this. I saw it last year, though my searching for rare and hard to find movies. It's an important movie, I think. It's an important movie that should be more praised. Yes, people should watch this. Nice to hear both of your thoughts. No, thank you.
And I agree with him.
And we have Shadowman4710 who comments quite frequently on our YouTube videos. I'm really glad you guys found this little forgotten gem of a film. They used to play it all the time on cable in the late 80s to early 90s, but it's since largely disappeared. There are very few war films made about this period in history. There are one or two about the first Gulf War, including the much underappreciated Jarhead, but that's about it. The acting here is really first class, and it's well directed. yeah, totally agree. It's a really good film. Going to our episode on Siege, our last episode we did. You were not on that one, unfortunately.
I was not.
Yeah.
I disappeared. I ran away.
She was locked down in an apartment.
Restaurant. I was serving people.
But someone called Vaughn Kuhlmeyer made a comment there. Of course, that's our friend Vaughn, who was on that episode. And he asked, "Where's the movie? I don't want to listen to this dummy from Jersey. Could you re-upload this with just Lee's audio?" Well, there you go. Taking a shot at himself there a little bit, and taking a shot at us too, because it is the running joke. Where's the movie? Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
No, if anything, Vaughn is a master of self-depreciating humor, much like I am. Quite often.
I'm trying to watch the movie before I watch or listen to that podcast, because I started listening to it and I'm like, nope, I want to watch the movie first. So I need to watch that movie. Yeah,
you do. You definitely do.
Yeah.
And our final comment here, this is on our Sherlock Holmes and the Secret Weapon episode that we did with Matt Anderson a few weeks back. This is also Shadowman4710. And he says, I went back to rewatch these earlier in the year and realized that I hadn't seen at least half of them. Of course, talking about the entire sort of Sherlock Holmes series. This sadly is one of my least favorite of the bunch, second only to the really subpar Voice of Terror. I just don't like these attempts at making murder mystery stories into spy films. Yeah, Lestrade is fun, but Watson continues to get on my last nerve as the incompetent bungler. I'll give this one a 5 out of 10 at best. And, I mean, I'll say that's totally fair in the sense that, I mean, there's just some people who don't like having their Sherlock Holmes fucked with and stop being like the detective in the Victorian times that he originally was, right?
And we kind of commented on that too, saying that it took away from the whole mystery detective thing and turned into more of like a I guess you could say spy movie, like you said.
Yeah.
Because we definitely made that point, because it did feel non-Sherlock Holmes-esque. Like it definitely lacked that true Sherlock Holmes feel.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I said even on the episode, like, I was originally sort of in the same position that Shadow Man was in here when it comes, years ago when it came to these, where I was like, I'm really kind of against Sherlock Holmes being just a super spy or whatever. But I've kind of like turned the corner on that a little bit. I kind of enjoy it now, like taking it in context of when it was made and stuff. I think it's actually pretty effective, and some people have done far worse for Sherlock Holmes than this. So, I mean, yeah. All right. Thank you guys for the comments. And I should just mention, of course, you can only, not only can you leave comments on our YouTube videos, and those sort of come out infrequently. Like I don't post those like right with the upload of the actual podcast episode on Apple Podcasts or whatever. If you do join the Facebook group, They Must Be Destroyed on Sight on Facebook, you can leave all the comments you want, and that's probably the preferred way of us getting to your comments really quick and responding to them on the show. But not going to, people find our podcast where they find it, so that's cool too. Thank you for the comments either way. Going to move over to what we've watched recently now, and I will throw it over to you.
So, since I have been watching a ton of movies for class, I kind of wanted to bring some up. So with Repulsion and Night of the Living Dead are two of the ones that I've had to watch. And I'm kind of excited that this class has been directing me into these movies, because they're very iconic movies, to say the least. Like I know Repulsion had the first orgasm, because you hear her have an orgasm on British television that was allowed by the censors back then. Like it's I just found that out, so it's kind of cool to be watching these movies that were made so long ago that are still like iconic today. So I just want to bring that up. And then I also watched Beautiful. It's with Minnie Driver. I can't remember what year. Anyways, it's about a woman who wants to win the Miss America pageant, and she's technically not allowed because she has a child. Talk about like the most selfish, terrible human being just getting everything she wants right at the end because she's just like, I'm a mother. I should be allowed to win. Like, you watch the movie and it's so cringeworthy. Like, I think it's gotten terrible, terrible reviews on any site that you check. And it is. It's a garbage movie. Like, the end had this kind of more beautiful message where they do want to respect, like, kind of break the traditions of, like, your standard Miss America, whatever, and take away kind of the more archaic sexist positions that they have. But they do it so terribly. Like, the whole movie, they explain this so terribly. Like, she's supposed to be a mother, and her best friend basically adopts the child, and the mother is basically the aunt, and the best friend is the mother to this child. And the actual mother is garbage to this child. Even as an aunt, she's a terrible caregiver. And then, like, their relationship when they have the pageant, it just turns out to be this beautiful thing that, like, bonds each other in seconds. And then also the aunt gets sent to jail because she's a home, what's it called? Oh, geez, I can't remember now. Anyways, people who, like, she works in nursing homes. And this...
Healthcare worker.
Personal support worker.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking of. So she's a PSW, and this old lady hides her sleeping pills because she basically wants to commit suicide because she's absolutely miserable. Anyway, she kills herself on an overdose, and the best friend goes to jail on the suspicion that she might have done it. And we end the movie, and we don't know what happens to the best friend. They're watching the pageant. They're watching the pageant in prison, and they're all excited because, like, Minnie Driver wins the contest, but it never goes back to say what happened to the best friend. The best friend just left in jail to rot. Like,
oh, that's great.
It's so dumb. It's so dumb. Like, it's so bad. Like, it's definitely one of the worst movies I've watched in a long time. Oh, hint. Any of you who are going to listen to our worst and our best ofs, that has definitely made the list. That has far made the list.
Okay, yeah, and actually, you know, I should have the wherewithal this time to actually record the episode when we do it this time for this year.
You're not allowed to fuck up again.
Yeah, since and also, you know, I don't know if anyone actually listens to us, actually gives a shit, but I've, like, constantly promised, like, I will give the, like, printed versions of our lists on the Facebook group.
I put all that effort into writing everything down, and then you never posted. I was like,
well, Daniel never gave me his list, so, like, Daniel's been too busy fighting Nazis and shit, so, you know.
I did my homework, okay?
I know you did.
Just posted mine.
I might still get around to posting those. So it's just fucking...
I guess you could do it, like, on the actual day, like, when we record it. So when you have the recording, then in the description, just throw it on there.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Okay. Anything else you want to talk about? Or
no, I think that's it. That's it.
Okay. I'll mention two things really quick here. First one I'll mention is a movie called Cisco Pike from 1972. This is starring Chris Christopherson. I think it's his first starring role, if I'm not mistaken. And you know who Chris Christopherson is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's mostly known as a musician, but he is an actor too. And this is back in the period where I kind of think his music was, like, really, really good too, where he wasn't as country western as he became in his later years. So he plays this sort of folk rock guy who got busted and went to jail for like 5 years over a drug charge. And he's getting out, and he's determined to, like, clean himself up and go straight and get his band back together and all that. So he's wandering around making connections back with his old friends, his girlfriend, Karen Black, who's stunning in this. And he gets waylaid by a dirty cop played by Gene Hackman, who I think is the guy who busted him in the first place. He's now basically blackmailing him and saying, you're going to sell all of these kilos of really high-grade marijuana that I've gotten a hold of illegally for me and make me $10,000 within the span of one weekend, or I'm going to bust your ass right back to jail on some flimsy charge. And so basically, Cisco Pike here is forced to reconnect with all of his old drug buddies and try to make contacts. And he's literally got a little black book of addresses and phone numbers and such. And so the movie is kind of a very casual hangout movie. Like, it's a neo-noir at its core, but it's the majority of the movie is just hanging out with Cisco Pike and following him as he makes these drug deals and tries to sell as much weed as he can within the span of the weekend, all the while trying to keep it a secret from his girlfriend. His ex-bandmate, played by Harry Dean Stanton, comes into town, and he's a heroin addict now, so that adds complications. And I think the real big thing here is, like, Gene Hackman's performance as the dirty cop is fucking fantastic. Like, it's a very sort of off-kilter performance for him, where you don't really know why exactly he needs the money so badly, but he plays it like he's very nervous and unhinged and a little crazy, and it slowly unravels as the film goes on. And I thought it was really, really fucking good. Like, it's a very leisurely paced film, but it's a little slice of Los Angeles that doesn't exist anymore. It's just it's a total time and place kind of movie that you just don't see anymore, because Los Angeles isn't that anymore. And so I think it's a valuable little time capsule because it feels very authentic. Like, the performances are very naturalistic. It's got a couple of really good character actors in there. There's one I particularly like who only did like maybe 4 or 5 films in her career in the 70s, named Joy Bang. And surprisingly not a porn star,
Stealing that name.
Yeah, it's really, really good. Definitely worth checking out if you haven't checked it out. The other one I'm going to mention, and this one sort of connects to something we watched just the other night. We watched Night of the Living Dead, so you could bone up for your class. And I watched Night of the Animated Dead from 2021.
Ooh.
Yeah, don't get too excited.
Oh.
So this is an animated remake of the film. It's pretty much like a shot-for-shot like remake of it, but just it's animated. The animation is terrible. The design is terrible. The animation is terrible. It looks like a bad Flash cartoon from like the 2000s. There's like some high profile kind of, voice actors and stuff in it doing the voices, but it's a total waste of fucking time. Like, there's some slight tweaks to it. Like, it puts some actual gore in it that you don't see in the actual movie. But my God, is it terrible. The score is fucking terrible. It's just a waste of everybody's fucking time. I don't know why they did it. It's just, there's been remakes of Night of the Living Dead. Like, I suggested to you that you should watch the 1990 remake of Night of the Living Dead. Nobody should watch Night of the Animated Dead because it's fucking horrible. It is fucking horrible. But yeah, with that, we're going to take a quick break, play a podcast promo, some music, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about Creature with the Atom Brain. And I don't know about you, Lee, but I think
we got this, man. We got this by the ass.
All right.
Perfect, baby. Perfect.
You ungodly warlock.
There's this show called Moviemelt, and you probably know about it. And it's once every 2. I have no idea how often this is uploaded. And it's a show where a bunch of compañeros get together and we play some fun games, trivia mainly. We talk about new releases. We have some fun games where we try and guess the title of a movie based on stuff that really probably religious people write on IMDb. Yeah, it takes about 20 hours to record. There's always a failure midway through. And then the highlight of the week of the show is reviewing a movie. Usually it's kind of a interesting, lesser-known cult-type movie, and it's quite enjoyable. It sounds good in theory, yes. I might have a listen one day.
Wow.
Wow. You ungodly warlock.
No one knew for sure from where he came. Return of the creature with the atom brain. He got out of fantasy. It looks just like you and me. Oh no, the creature with the atom brain. It's outrageous, contagious, stupefying. Return of the creature with the atom brain. Moving all across the land, waving flags and shaking hands. Who can stop the creature with the atom brain? It's outrageous, contagious, stupefying. There's no denying. Atom brain. Return of the creature with the atom brain. Chaos reigned in every land. Was no one could understand. Who will stop the creature with the atom brain? Atom brain. Atom brain. Atom brain. Atom brain.
Okay, Creature with the Atom Brain from 1955, and we do have a trailer.
Fission science creates an electronic monster so terrifying only screams can describe it.
Come back home. Come back home.
According to the evidence, Hennessy was murdered by a creature with atom rays of superhuman strength, and a creature that cannot be killed by bullets.
I said I would live to see you die.
I just came from the Bureau. They checked the murderer's fingerprints. His name is Willard Pierce. They let me have it from the files.
Petty theft, fraud, 3 months in prison, tubercular. How could a tubercular man have strength enough to break those bars like that?
You think that's something? Answer this one. How could a dead man have strength enough to do it?
Fantastic, but based on scientific fact.
Planes. How low you're flying?
You will stop all planes and trucks searching for radioactivity.
If you do not, many people will be killed.
There will be no other warning.
Hello! 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 They hung up before I could put a tracer on it.
Slow down, Dave. Dave, did they? No. Well, and kill them.
There's a reason why trailers are mostly a visual medium. But yes, Creature with the Atom Brain from 1955. This is directed by Edward L. Cahn, and he's a fairly important name as far as when we get to this period of like atomic monsters and stuff goes. He did a lot of stuff since like the 1930s. He was doing mostly second feature runs, basically, like stuff like second features to attach to bigger movies for the studio. But he sort of gained some notoriety and kind of gained a reputation as a like really good workman-like director who got stuff done on time and under budget, and generally made better than the usual schlocky movies. Like he even with low budgets, he generally made pretty decent films. If you look at like his IMDb scores for most of his films, as you know, as iffy as IMDb scores can be at times, most of them kind of range over 5, like, 6 or 7, something like that. So he does have some pretty significant ones. Invasion of the Saucermen from 1957, The She-Creature from 56, It, The Terror from Beyond Space from 58, Curse of the Faceless Man from 1958, and kind of a remake of this film in a way, although it's aliens taking over dead bodies, called Invisible Invaders from 1959. We have a writer here, Kurt Siodmak. I practiced this earlier and I still fucked it up. Kurt Siodmak. He started off basically as a journalist with his wife, Henrietta, and they lived well into, like, up till, like, year 2000, something like that. Like, they lived well into their 90s together and were married all that time. Their first sort of introduction to movies is they had bit parts on the movie Metropolis as sort of bit walk-on players as they were, doing a story on the film. And then he sort of got into film writing. He was also a novelist, and one of his novels, Donovan's Brain, was remade like 4 times in Hollywood. And he also wrote The Invisible Man Returns, The Invisible Woman, The Wolf Man, Frankenstein Meets the Wolf Man, I Walked with the Zombie, and Earth versus the Flying Saucers. So he did a lot of really cool shit, especially within this period. As for our cast here, just a couple people I'll mention in length, and basically our first two players. Richard Denning as Dr. Chet Walker. His other credits of note are Creature from the Black Lagoon from 1954, The Black Scorpion from 57, and he had a long fucking stint on Hawaii Five-0 as, I think, like an attorney general or some shit like that. Like, I don't know exactly what he did, but he's one of these guys who, by the time his career hit the 60s, he transitioned to television and sort of wrote out the rest of his career only doing TV. Then we have Angela Stevens as Joyce Walker. She didn't do a lot of films. Like, her career kind of ended in the 60s, too, doing a bit of TV. And she has an interesting life, though. Probably her most other notable film, although she's just like a bit player on it, is The Wild One from 53, which is the Marlon Brando biker movie. But she retired abruptly from acting, it says, in the early 60s to take care of her ailing 15-year-old son, Joe, who tragically broke his neck after driving off a pier and hitting a sandbar. So she nursed him for 23 years until his death at the age of 38, apparently. So, wow. Yeah, she's definitely putting family first here and ahead of her career. Apparently, also, she wasn't, like, too big into being an actress. Like, she had no big grand designs for it. It was just a way to make money. It was like, I look really good, and they want to put me in pictures, and they're going to pay me. So that's kind of what she was doing there. But one other neat story, though, with her, she seems to have had quite an eventful life. In 55, Stevens sued a dress shop owners for $36,500, saying an attack from a wild and vicious ocelot disfigured her, which cost her a role in the film.
What?
Yeah, so somehow she got attacked by an ocelot at a dress shop.
What?
Yes. I don't know how this could happen, but apparently it did. And she won. She got a settlement. So Yeah, good for her. I don't know if the bites were on her face or anything. I think they were on her arms or some shit or something. But either way, she claims she lost a role for it. And yeah, we got S. John Lautner as Captain Dave Harris. Michael Granger as Frank Buchanan. Gregory Gay as Dr. Wilhelm Stig. Linda Bennett as Penny Walker. Tristan Coffin as District Attorney McGraw. Harry Lauder as Reporter 1, Larry J. Blake as Reporter 2, Chris Evans as Chief Camden, and Pierre Watkin as Mayor Brimmer. And we have synopsis here from Gabe Taverny on IMDb. Several years earlier, gangster Frank Buchanan was deported to his native Italy Buchanan, that's a real Italian fucking name. Like, they should have said he should have been deported to like fucking like Ireland or something, right? Like, you could get away with saying Buchanan is maybe an Irish name, right? Like, and he has no accent. He has no Italian accent. Like, if anything, he's an Irish gangster. Was deported to his native Italy through the efforts of law enforcement authorities and rival gangsters who inform on him. While in Europe, he meets scientist Wilhelm Stig, who's an ex-Nazi, by the way, who has perfected a method of reanimating dead people and controlling their behavior with oral commands. Buchanan underwrites Stig's experiments and uses his technology to wreak revenge on his enemies. Unfortunately, radioactive poisoning is a byproduct of the process, and authorities use radiation-detecting devices like Geiger counters to pinpoint the source of the sinister plot. Yeah, that sort of happens. But we'll get into it here. So I know this is the first time watch for you, Lee. What'd you generally think about this one?
I found it really interesting. So I kind of enjoyed the concept of it. Now that you mentioned the whole Italian thing, it kind of makes me laugh because, like, German and Italians in the 1950s.
Yeah.
And also with Henrietta being the doll's name, just another thing that I noticed when you were giving me all those facts. So
yeah,
it's kind of cool. And it's kind of cool and interesting. But overall, I did enjoy it because I thought the actual storyline itself was interesting. It's a lot more difficult to make these kind of movies nowadays because we have a lot more information readily available for like science things. And some of the science they did mention was something that is real, but it's extremely, extremely, extremely loosely based. Like there's just a couple things here and there where I'm like, okay, yeah, that does make sense. But then the rest of it is just entire garbage of information.
They do give us right, like they do the same thing they did in Them, right, where they give us like the slideshow kind of thing on the screen of exposition dump. Basically, it's like, well, you know, with animals, and they had this cute little dog hooked up to her electrodes. It's like, don't do that.
No, I know the dog wasn't actually connected to them, but I couldn't watch it. I was like, no, don't do that.
But it was like, so, you know, send, you know, the concept of send signals to the brain and you can make the brain do different things. And it goes back to the basic thing of like, you know, cutting open a frog and putting signals into it to make its legs move and shit like that. Like, it has that concept, right? And then it's like, you know, they explain, okay, yeah, we could do that with living creatures. You know, our dead creatures, we can make them jump and stuff like that, but we can't make them walk around and talk and shit because there's not enough energy in the dead body to, you know, sort of do that. But he's like, well, what if we use radiation, some sort of radioactive magic stuff? You know, basically radiation is magic in this period. Basically, it can do anything. So they just say
50s too.
It is very 50s. Yeah. But it's like it's not like what, and I think we'll talk about like the connections to this to like something that Romero does later on in Night of the Living Dead, but it's a very it's not so much even like anti-communist or anything like that in this film. It's just very, I don't know, just we don't know what radiation does, so we're going to make up shit and kind of put it in this hackneyed kind of plot. Like, I gotta say, you gotta really suspend your disbelief in this one.
You do. You definitely do. Like I said, they definitely play around with the idea that information is not readily available for everyone. If you did a movie like that nowadays, people would just be like, this is fucking bullshit, because we get the basics of a lot of things. Like, we understand the basics of a lot of things, and we also have, like, can easily Google search whatever. But back then, it wasn't as if you could just go and find a textbook on this stuff, because it was more difficult information to find. So that's why I kind of think the whole concept is really interesting, because they took something like the whole radiation thing, which I know in the 50s was kind of something that was like there was a love-hate with it. Like, I remember with advertisement, they would show, not me specifically, just remember seeing ads that showed the old school ads, but where they had like the makeup and they'd show a Geiger counter and be like, see, low Geiger counters. Like, just that kind of stuff. Yeah, just that kind of stuff. So I think there was a massive fear of radiation in general. So to put it as a movie, to kind of take the whole concept and make a story out of it, it's almost as if it's like getting people ready. Like, people be like, this is what happens when radiation comes around. I don't know. It was kind of like a hilarious movie to watch. I know it was supposed to be more of a scary movie, but it's a little bit outdated when it comes to a lot of the, like we said, a lot of science terms and all that stuff. But I just thought it was like funny to watch. Like, it was a fun watch, especially comparing it to like today information and back then information. Like, the sexism was real in there, the child abuse was real in there, like the way just the doctor, how he talked and all the things that he said. Like, it's just a lot of word salad to try and sound smart. Like, yeah, it's a very, very iconic 50s movie. Like, just that, everything about it, like everything you hear about a stereotypical like 1950s thinking person is in that movie. Yeah, and like I said, like the movie, I do like this a lot, but the movie is very, like, it's both kind of smart and dumb about radiation at the same time. Like, I did like that, like, this is kind of like one of the early versions of, hey, they should wear radiation suits and have sort of lead-lined, walls and shit to, like, avoid radiation getting to them and getting detected. And because they have this gangster who's hired this Nazi scientist, they have all these dead bodies they're reanimating, and they've got them sort of cordoned off into this lab that's just flooded with fucking radiation, and that's kind of where they sit to recharge and stuff. And they have to put on the radiation suits and go into that lab. So that's kind of really cool. Like, I like that. Like, that's kind of foreshadowing what movies would be like later on with, decontamination chambers and radiation and suits and such. So that's cool. But then you get the idea later on where the scientist goes out, he has to get out of the fucking lab, he has to go out and have a drink, or something like that. He has to just, get out for a stroll. And the idea that by this time the government's searching for high levels of radiation, the idea that they'd pick up his radiation and follow him, if he had that much radiation coming off him, he'd be dead. He'd be dead. He would be dead. He would be dead. Yeah. Like, even just, oh my God, that's the whole funny part to it. To me. Sure, let's put that in. It's just the ridiculousness of radiation, like how easy everyone is just handling the radiation, hanging around people with radiation. Like, it's just so ridiculous. Because even being around the guy who has radiation can cause some problems too. Like, radiation is awful. It's terrible. Well, the doctor takes so the thing they do with these corpses is they take their blood out and they put a radioactive fluid in them to keep their bodies working and keep their brains going. And so the first one of the zombies they get a hold of that they do tests on, they take some of his radioactive blood liquid, whatever the fuck it is, and the guy does some tests on it, puts a Geiger counter up to it, and the guy's like, is that dangerous? He's like, well, prolonged exposure to this would be incredibly dangerous for anybody. So it's like he's basically saying, like, a nuclear reactor kind of is walking into these people's places, and if you walk around them, you're like in serious danger of like getting sick from radiation really quick. Yeah. But they kind of forget that too. Like they kind of just conveniently
drop that and then forget it later on. Like the final battle between all those fucking zombies and the soldiers and stuff. All those soldiers and cops got cancer later on, like in reality, because they were like basically like Greco-Roman wrestling with these fucking things at one point, and yeah, they're dead. They're all dead.
They're all dead. Even the guy who went into the lab is dead because there was enough radiation around there that would. Even anyone who went into the house. Let's be real. Anybody who went in the house with that much radiation, I don't care if they like had their suits on when they directly dealt with it. They just opened a fucking door.
Yeah.
That's not going to protect them. Like labs have like multiple chambers in order to try and like remove any sort of remnants of it. This was just someone's basement where they put a fucking plexiglass. Like, yeah, that should stop it. Like,
but so the thing, one of the key things I'll say about this that I really like though is it is very cheap. Like I think this is probably even cheaper than most of the B pictures that were coming out at this time. But it's very effectively shot. Like you can tell the sets are cheap. You can tell it's very low budget. Like it's probably not even $100,000 back then, which was kind of like between 800,000 and 100,000 is probably where you'd see a lot of these pictures kind of sit. And it's more in like the $800,000 range, if not lower. I'm just by looking at it, I kind of gauge that a little bit. But it's very like this director, he's very good at effectively shooting what he has to work with. And one of the things I love about what he does here, and he did very few like actual takes and shots in this film to cut costs. So when characters are moving, they're moving to other rooms and stuff like that. Characters are constantly doing stuff, and especially in static shots that we open into, they're already moving when we get into those shots. It's not like actually, this is something we commented on when we were watching Night of the Living Dead the other night, where you see the zombie that keeps cutting back to the zombies and they've barely moved, or they're standing still and they just got the cue to start moving. So you see they were standing still for a second and then they start moving. Here you get none of that in this film. Like he's constantly got people moving, so you can tell he's started his takes even before he's sort of said action, I guess, or actually he'd said action and then he's started filming his right after they started moving, kind of thing. And it's just very well done in that way.
It's edited well.
It is.
It's very smooth to watch. I did laugh though with when the helicopter was following the car. The scenery from the helicopter was entirely different than what we've seen in the whole thing. Like it was a very much like a mock shot, not a mock shot.
It's called Poor Man's Process.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's like it's the same thing you see. Like it's a rear projection. It's the same thing you see like whenever you see like old noirs where they're driving a car or something like that. It's like the rear and side projection. Poor Man's Process. I mean, even Quentin Tarantino used it in Kill Bill, Volume 2, used Poor Man's Process. So, like, it's an old classic technique. But, so I do want to mention that just getting more into how stupid this whole thing is. And I'm not complaining that it's stupid. I just want to point out that it's stupid. So where you really have to suspend your disbelief is that the whole idea that this gangster is gone to this length to get revenge on these people who put him in jail and deported them. Like here's what his master plan is to get revenge instead of just, getting some gangster buddies to kill these people the old fashioned way. He's going to the trouble of having a scientist reanimate bodies for him and direct these bodies to these targets to kill them. And the funny thing is, he kind of thinks he's going to get away with this, but the whole process of this is leaving the biggest honking fucking clues for the police. And no matter how crazy this whole premise is, and the reality of what's happening is going to dawn on the police, and they're eventually going to follow these leads, no matter how fucking nuts they are, because they're the only fucking leads. Massive radiation, dead men walking.
The bodies are the dead men walking back to the actual place where they get reanimated.
Yeah. It's very inefficient. Like, it's so dumb. Like, his whole it's a weird thing. Like, usually it's just it would be the mad scientist doing this. Would make more sense, right? But it's a gangster hiring a mad scientist to do this, which is just like an extra level of something you don't really need in the plot. And honestly, if it was just a mad scientist doing this, and his motivations were maybe a bit more secret, or, you know, weren't as connected to something that the detectives could find out real quickly, which they do here in the film, you know, fairly quickly. Like, oh, it must be Buchanan getting revenge on the people who deported him. I think the film kind of would be more effective in the suspense department if they had like kept it a big mystery. But it's like pretty much scene one, you see them in the control room controlling the fucking undead zombie guy. It's like, okay, there's no mystery about what's going on here because they want it. But at the same time, it's a 69-minute movie. So I understand why they had to like just move it along. Like, we don't have time for suspense, really. Like, if they had made this like this, there's a much more effective hour-and-a-half version of this movie where you don't know what the fuck's going on until like the last third of the film. That would be much like someone should actually remake this. But the problem is, of course, is like what you said. Everybody knows what radiation does and does not do. Yeah. So you can't really do this without it being a movie that kind of winks at the audience or whatever the fuck, and people are just going to shit on that, no matter what. But
I did think it was okay. So I did think it was kind of cool that it had the concept of like Frankensteins Monster. Mm-hmm. So you still had that idea of like reanimating a body, and I thought that was pretty interesting because it just recreated a already made monster and kind of adapted it to the times back then. Mm-hmm. So that was really interesting to me. That was something that I did enjoy.
And I mean, the little minute details in this film, they do put in some nice little minute details that like a lower grade picture at this time just wouldn't bother with. Like, I like how, they try to make things look plausible. They got the laboratory, they got the guy with the mic to his mouth, and he's saying what he wants the monster to do, but he's also using it to talk through the fucking zombie, basically. And
they
I
have
like
the
how
foreign doctor.
Mm-hmm. and I like how the voice that comes out is his voice, but they mention plenty of times that it sounds like a recording of a recording. It's mechanical. There's this cool little spooky details there. I like how violent this movie kind of is. It's in a suggestive way. Like, you don't see the kills directly on screen, but the very first one, the silhouette of the guy getting pulled up and having his back broken, like, that's just fucking cool. And you hear the back break too, which is it's just surprising for a 1955 movie. Then the other guy who gets pulled out of his car and strangled, also, and just gets strangled quick, like just you hear his neck get broke and he's dropped into his car. Very effective stuff.
The music I found, like we said, the editing was brilliantly done. Like, considering the budget and all the rest of that stuff. Mm-hmm. The fact is, the technology is not amazing, but I found that they did a really good job with everything they had. Yeah. The same with like the choice of music, the same with background music, the same with sound effects. Everything they did was amazing. And even just I just appreciate the music alone. I thought from beginning to end, everything they used for music, I absolutely enjoyed.
Yeah, and it was all so they didn't write a score for this. They did the sort of typical thing that they do back at this point. Like, they'd either get like classical music, which they didn't do in this, or they'd get like just library cues and arrange them, basically. And that's what they did for this one. So they picked very suitable kind of like 1950s. Hey, what is everyone else doing in their movies? And what is your cat doing? Attacking the keyboard?
Attacking pens.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of watching her. It's funny to watch. I would get disconnected though. She stops my keyboard. Okay, I got her.
Get that atomic creature out of there.
Her claws.
I do want to mention that I also like it's 1950s, and yes, there is the typical like sexism and stuff like that. But at the same time, so our main character, Chet, and his wife, Joyce, and we get a bunch of scenes in like domestic bliss, quote unquote, 1950s style with these two. I do like that it's like it implies that they're down to fuck in the morning as soon as he gets up. Yeah. It's like
there's some cute things that I did enjoy.
Like his partner, who is Captain Dave Harris, comes in, and he's like, "Okay, is Chet here?" What, he doesn't ask his wife to wake him up for him. He's like, "Wake him up. Get him down here," basically, kind of 1950s sexism there. But at the same time, he's got like this cute relationship with their daughter. Like she calls him, she calls him Uncle Dave and shit like that. And she's obviously like really fond of him. So while he's entertaining her and keeping her busy in the kitchen, Chet's getting woken up by Joyce, and he pulls her down on the bed. Yeah, she is. And he's got this like extra bouncy bed. I noticed, like it moves a lot. It's like I guess they just fucked the hell out of that bed. I guess is what's the implication there, because it's almost like a water bed the way it fucking moves. But yeah, they almost fuck. And he's like, well, Dave doesn't know what he's missing. He's not married or whatever. And that's like a sticking point that comes up later. Like the daughter asks Dave, "Oh, Uncle Dave, aren't you married?" And it's like it doesn't really go anywhere. But I do like that. These scenes sort of like they drag a little bit, but there's a big payoff here, and it's like one of the true real horror payoffs in this film, where she is so fond, like the little daughter is so fond of Uncle Dave, and Uncle Dave becomes a victim of the zombification and is like used as a zombie, and he comes to the home as a zombie, and you don't know what the fuck's going to happen. Like, is he going to attack the daughter? Is he going to attack the wife? But he's just, he doesn't end up attacking them, but he does destroy her doll. Yeah. And then later on at the end of the film, the parents don't have it in them to tell her that Uncle Dave is dead. Yeah. To say, "Oh, he's gone away. He's going to be gone for a while, but he gave you this for your birthday. This new doll to replace the old one that got destroyed." And it's like, man, that's actually kind of really poignant and sad. Like that, like there's some emotional depth there that I did not expect from this film at all. And I was pretty impressed with that.
I was impressed too. I thought it was hilarious when at the beginning of the movie, when they first discover that this is like a reanimated body, that it's not like alive, and they tell the press, like it just says everything to the press, and the guy's like, "I'm going to misspell your name."
Speaking of the press, yeah, because he's like, "What the fuck are you talking about? What kind of malarkey are you giving us?" Basically, I'm going to misspell your name, asshole. You telling us this bullshit? But speaking of the press, they have a segment with a TV newsman who's like reporting on this to the general public. And the first time he does it, he's like, "This is obvious bullshit. You can believe that if you want to." But they're like, "Fuck this crap." And then eventually he turns around. Did you pick up what his name is?
No.
Dick Cutting.
Oh.
I just thought it was funny. I thought it was pretty hilarious. Also, this movie at one point uses a bunch of disaster stock footage as well to eat up some time, because the gangster like says, unless you stop looking for us, this is during the point where the government's like taking radiation detecting trucks out and stuff. He's like, unless you stop looking for us, we're going to start like destroying shit. Then all of a sudden you see like stock footage of trains going off fucking tracks and planes exploding. And there's actually some footage cut in there that if you look closely, it's actually some of the footage that's shown later when the zombies are fighting the soldiers.
Did you see? Okay. The biggest thing I thought was really funny was the fact that they were using grenades and tossing them, and they just made this little tiny explosion and be like, "Oh, grenades do nothing." Excuse me? You can put a hole through it, but a fucking grenade won't even like make a dent on their skin? And how tiny are these grenades? Like, what are
yeah.
Like, I just saw, as soon as I saw that, I was like, hold on a second.
There's
right by a house, and there's no like
just the
shockwave from it.
just a shockwave should knock them down at the very least, right? There is one zombie that does get chopped up by shrapnel from the grenade. Like that's another thing I wanted to mention. Like, this is the first film. It's not the first film to use squib work, but it's the first widely distributed film, like to this degree, that uses squib work. Like, there were some lower budget westerns and stuff that had done it beforehand, but this is the first one to have like real squib work, as far as like you see like bullets coming out the back of a person or whatever. Okay. And you see some squib work on some of the zombies when they're getting shot in the final battle or whatever. There is some squib work for one zombie when the grenade explodes beside him. Like, you see a couple little pieces like shred off him, basically, kind of thing. But yeah, there is a big disparity between what damage the grenade does. Why did they
bother with the grenades in the first place? That's what I want.
It just looks good, I guess, at the end.
It just looked ridiculous. That really annoyed me, because I didn't care that the zombies, like, they could have just blown away and just walked up again. Even if they're missing like an arm or something, it would still have been hilarious to see him like still going. But the fact that a grenade went up beside them and they didn't even move, like, I think that defies science way more than the rest of
it is. It is a little hard to. Yeah,
that was extremely hard to wrap your brain around.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, like I think this is an important film in a way. Like, it's just a cheap little film they made to try to make some money. But like, I don't know if this directly influenced Romero, but it's definitely one of the films that was sort of being made around this time that did kind of influence him as far as his idea of what zombies were. You know, because like, if anything, this is made around this vaguely in the same period as stuff like I Am Legend, which had like zombie, like vampire plague victims doing stuff that was very influential in Romero. But this feels like very much close to Romero zombies, like these guys walking around. They all got their like lobotomy scars. Dude, nobody notices the detective's lobotomy scar until until his hat comes off.
The massive, all of them. No one notices that there's a massive thing on their front of their forehead, in front of their forehead, right on the forehead, right in the middle, right. The obvious scars. Worse, like, it's a black and white movie, but it would definitely be worse in color. So in person, you notice right away. Like, people will notice a pimple in someone's face. You don't think they'll notice like a massive scar across the head?
Yeah.
My goodness, did I ever laugh with the chase scene, or not the chase scene, but the point where Dave and the doctor were in the same car. Chet were in the same car.
Yeah.
And Dave's driving, and he's driving like dodging traffic off the road, going around, and Chet's like, well, be careful.
Yeah. Simmer down a little bit, man.
And then jumps out of the car completely unscathed. He just jumps out. He's like, oh, geez. Like, you just jumped out of this car. Your adrenaline would be so high right now.
Yeah, no, nothing phases Chet. He's very Chet is very cool to about everything. Like, he doesn't even seem all that, put out by the fact that dead men are walking around with reanimated atomic brains. He's just like, okay,
oh, weird.
Yeah. He's very, very, actually Chet's kind of the guy you maybe want in a situation like this, because he's very level-headed, or he's totally insane and he's gonna like slit everyone's throat in the night or something like that. One or the other. But
I did have a question. I don't know if you know what that was, but in the press point where they were like dropping papers in the thing, like when they were doing all the phone calls.
Oh yeah.
And they're showing that scene. Okay, what was that? Do you know what that was? I only saw it really quickly, but that's the first time I've seen it in a movie, and I don't really know what it was supposed to be. I don't know if it was like 911 emergencies where they like send the messages out, or if it's news press, because I know news press and like the phone calls were kind of like at the same time happening.
Yeah, I think that was just generally a montage to like, we're rallying, we're going to rally the troops, we're going to get everyone informed.
Yeah, but what was that process though? Like, it was literally like they wrote a piece of paper, like people were calling, they wrote whatever information, put it on this like little conveyor belt, and then it just went. I was just really curious as to what that was because I've never seen that.
Yeah, I don't know. I do not know what that is, honestly.
I was trying to kind of make a hypothesis too, because I was trying to think like maybe it's 911 calls and they send emergencies down.
Maybe.
Or maybe it's like journalism and they send information down. I don't know.
Either, yeah.
Like where to go?
Yeah, I guess, because, you know, we're always thinking in the context of like anything you want to tell someone, it's just one quick click away.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. That's why I thought it was really it was really cool seeing that because it's like old school technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was just kind of interested, like what the process was, like how that actually worked, and what it was in the general. Like I couldn't figure it out. So viewers, if you know, let me know.
Yeah.
I want to be educated.
But yeah, I think this is really good. I think it's it's not like a boring like one that you want to make a lot of fun of and shit like that. Yeah. Like it's actually a generally pretty good movie, pretty solid.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's got some creepy moments, and I think it's a little unheralded as like being fairly important in the sense that like it's influential to future movies. Like there are some innovations in this film. And I mean, I don't know if Romero ever said he saw this one and was, you know, kind of thinking of this movie, but there was a lot of similar movies to this sort of in the time period that were kind of doing these Walking Dead reanimated corpse things with radiation and shit that, I mean, generally the most agreed upon thing is that some sort of radiation is reanimating the living dead and Night of the Living Dead, like the returning radiation from the Venus probe that they destroyed before it came in, you know, got into Earth's orbit or whatever kind of thing. So I figure like maybe if not directly this film, the sort of quote unquote zeitgeist of this sort of era with this sort of thing was probably on Romero's mind when making this shit.
It was. I read that in my textbook today.
Oh, well, there you go.
That exact information.
Oh, well, shit. Look at me. But yeah, it's really good, and you should watch it. It is a little hard to find. I did have a YouTube link for this that I shared with Lee, and then like a day later, it got yeeted off of fucking YouTube, just like ripped off of YouTube and destroyed. So I gave her the Daily Motion link. So it's still on Daily Motion. But there are some releases you can buy as well for this. There's a single Blu-ray, and it's also part of the Cold War Creatures set. Those are both from Arrow Video, and those just came out in 2021, as far as I know. And there's a couple of DVD releases as well. There's one from Mill Creek Entertainment, which was like the 60th anniversary edition. It's from Mill Creek, so I don't know if that necessarily means there's, you know, cleaning up of the film or there's any extras or anything, because sometimes Mill Creek just doesn't do that, but it's probably okay. And there's also the Icons of Horror collection, the Sam Katzman collection, and Sam Katzman was the producer of this and several other films during this time period, and that's from Sony. And it might be on Rare Lust. I did not check. I imagine it probably is. But yeah, that's it.
That's it. I do have a couple things I want to mention before.
Sure, go ahead.
We wrap it up here. So there was one scene at the end where the zombies, like he takes the uranium out and like he starts smashing the machines. Mm-hmm. I like how I call them zombies. Anyways, reanimated corpses. Where they were stopping, the fighting had stopped because they started collapsing, and there was this one cop in the corner where his fighting, like, because I guess he just said just fight, his fighting was so like hands, like, it was so bad, it was just so comical to watch. Like he's just in the corner, it's just for a split second, but God damn it, is ever funny. It was, I don't know, it was just over the top fighting, and the zombie or the guy or whatever was like dying because they had no more brain activity or electric activity going on. And then he's just flailing his arms.
So he's just slapped them down, basically.
Yeah, like, it's so funny because they're so tough and he just barely knows how to fight. And at the end, when the girl calls the new doll Dave.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, they're progressive in a way.
Yeah, I think they just kind of like backed up into being progressive there. They didn't really think about it too much. Like,
it was just when she's like, I don't care. Like, good on you, girl. Good on you.
I'm calling it Dave, and they're like, well, that's a boy's name, and so I'll just say she's a tomboy. And he's like, well, I guess that works.
The progressive moment of the movie.
Yeah.
And then at the end, how all this craziness happened, and this guy could just go home for his daughter's birthday with no paperwork to do, no aftermath, totally calm and collected, be like, hey guys, I just saved the world.
Yeah, and his best friend died, who was probably, Uncle Dave was probably going to be, the godfather of his daughter as well. You kind of can imagine who, like, it's not implicitly implied, but it feels like maybe there was a little bit left of him in his brain activity, and that's why he strangled the gangster to death, kind of thing.
I think that's what they hinted at, because he opened the window so he could get in.
Yeah.
And then so Chet gets in. Yeah, opens the window for Chet, and then Dave goes in after Chet. And then when Chet is like cornered with a gun, Dave comes in and saves him. So it looks like there was some humanity still left in him, which, again, massive suspended belief. Like, literally, your brain's being reanimated, so no memories are in there. Which, again, is hilarious that they can't even understand it. Anyways, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, it's like...
let's get started again. So, another thing I thought was funny is how quick the papers were. Because, like I said, it was the girl's birthday, Dad was able to make it home, and the paper of the new fucking story was there. Like, again, we're in this age where we can, like, update information really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
They literally have to write a story, process it, and everything. And they can't just have one article. Like, it's a full newspaper. And they're just like, oh, hey, by the way, here. It's ready to go.
It's in the paper. It's official. It happened.
Like, I think it would have been more effective if they just did, like, a news report that you heard in the background.
Yeah, just put Dick Cutting back on the TV. It's like, and so saved the world from blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because they even could have done, like, an exit, like, leaving the house while they're in the kitchen and the radio's playing on in the living room. So then the daughter still wouldn't have heard it. Like, still, it would have made more sense to me than a fucking newspaper.
So you just made a better ending scene than what this movie had. But yeah, no, but I think in general we still both like this one. And,
yes, I do.
It is fun. It is a lot of fun. It's not one of those ones where the bad moments make you groan like some of these movies do, where it's like you really gotta go like, okay, maybe I need a few drinks before I watch this kind of thing. This is actually generally. It's actually shooting to be good. It's like taking things serious. So, yeah, check it out. Not sure what we're doing next or when we're doing it. There's going to be some sort of bump in our schedule here soon because Lee and I are going to be taking vacation in October. So that's going to mess with our schedules a little bit. Although, I don't know, maybe we could fucking somehow record something when we're on vacation. I don't know.
I think we could figure something out. I know I'm bringing my laptop.
Okay. We'll think of something. Maybe we'll just record. I don't know. If we're recording anything, it'll probably be for our own private use, but whatever.
Because, we listen to podcasts on our own time.
Exactly. Yeah. I wasn't talking about podcasts, but,
I make you shut up.
Yeah. So, Lee, is there anything you need to plug this week?
You can find me on Instagram at MightyTinyAllstar, and there is a bunch of pictures of both my dog and cat, and also updates of when a new podcast comes out.
Yeah, there you go. She is our social media maven.
I'm Instagram, only Instagram. You have Facebook. I have Instagram, and neither of us really do Twitter. Well, you do Twitter, but
I do Twitter, but Instagram's where it's at. It's where all the kids are now. Where they get their TikToks and their Snapchats and whatever else. I think that's how it works, right?
Yeah. I have a Snapchat that I don't even use. It's just there. People ask me for Snapchat. I'm like, okay, but it's nothing.
Yeah. But if you want to find the rest of our stuff, all of our links to Facebook, YouTube, etc., go to tmbdos.podbean.com. Find everything there. Join the Facebook group, like we said before. Best way to get in contact with us. And I imagine most of the stuff we're going to be doing in the next little while is going to be horror-centric, since we're getting into October. Some spooky stuff. I'm sure some of it's probably going to be stuff that's involving Lee's class because she's doing a horror movie class. So there's definitely some stuff on there that we haven't covered on the podcast that we probably will end up covering. So
some classics on there.
Yeah. But until then, thank you, Lee. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening. We'll be back when we're back. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. For further episodes, our Apple Podcasts, Facebook, and YouTube links, please go to tmbdos.podbean.com. Thank you. Drive through.